Abu Bakr, 11, 13, age 632, 634 AD. Early life. Abu Bakr was born in 573 AD in a noble and respectable family of Makkah. His name was Abdullah. Abu Bakr was his surname, kunya, before he embraced Islam. After his conversion to Islam, he received the title of Siddiq, or truthful. From his boyhood, he was an emblem of purity and sincerity, and for his nobleness of character, everybody loved him. His heart melted at the sight of sorrows and sufferings of others. He tried his level best to help the poor and the needy, the distressed, and the downtrodden. Abu Bakr had a special attraction for Muhammad. Peace be upon him, and when the latter invited men to embrace Islam, he was the first of the male adults to respond to his call. His whole life was dedicated to the sacred cause of Muhammad. Peace be upon him. Many slaves who were persecuted and tortured by their masters because of the acceptance of Islam were purchased and set free by Abu Bakr. He left no stone unturned to spread the faith of Muhammad. Peace be upon him. He had to suffer a lot of troubles in the cause of Islam. His service to the cause of Islam endeared him all the more to the Prophet, who was so much pleased with him that during his lifetime he gave him permission to lead the prayer. At the time of Muhammad's, peace be upon him, flight to Medina, Abu Bakr accompanied him and stood by his side all the while at Medina. He placed all his wealth at the disposal of Muhammad, peace be upon him, when the latter wanted money for the construction of a mosque at Medina and for the Tabuk expedition. He took part in the battles of Badr, Uhud, and Ditch. He was also present at the Treaty of Hudaybiyah and the Battle of Hunain. All this time he followed the Prophet like a shadow. The Prophet did not nominate his successor. So, after his death, the Muslim world was thrown into confusion. The Muslims were divided into two camps, the Ansar and the Muhajirun. Each was trying to raise its own people to the vacant post. The unity of Islam was at stake. The Ansar of Medina had assembled in the council hall to choose a ruler from amongst themselves. They had fixed their choice on Sa'd bin Ubaidah, the leader of the Khazraj. At this critical juncture of Islam, Abu Bakr, Umar, and Abu Ubaidah hastened to the council hall. Abu Bakr, in a calm attitude, said that so far as service to the cause of Islam was concerned, there could be no two opinions about the Ansar. But the people of Arabia would acknowledge no master but from amongst the Quraysh. Then, cried they, let there be one chief from amongst you, and one from amongst us. Away with you, exclaimed Umar. Two cannot stand together. At that time Abu Bakr asked the people to select either Umar or Abu Ubaidah as the Khalifa. But both of them said, no, we cannot give preference to ourselves over you in this matter. When the situation was going to be out of control, Umar took hold of Abu Bakr's hand and swore allegiance to him. After Umar and Abu Ubaidah, the Ansar came forward in batches to swear allegiance to Abu Bakr. So, homage was paid from all quarters to Abu Bakr. He was saluted as the Khalifa, Caliph, or the successor of the Prophet. Thus the first trouble was averted and the solidarity of Islam was maintained. The election of Abu Bakr settled the important problem of succession to the headship in Islam. Among the Arabs, the chieftaincy of a tribe was not hereditary but elective, and their election was made on the basis of seniority and efficiency. After the election was over, Abu Bakr rose and said, I am not the best among you. I need all your advice and all your help. To tell the truth to a person commissioned to rule is a faithful allegiance. To conceal it is treason. In my sight, the powerful and the weak are alike, and to both I wish to render justice. As I obey Allah and His Prophet, obey me. If I neglect the laws of Allah and the Prophet, I have no more right to your obedience. The inaugural speech of Abu Bakr contains the very principles of just government. It points out that the Khalifa would not be an autocrat. He must govern the country according to the laws of the Shariat and be responsible to the people for his actions. His accession. On becoming the Khalifa, Abu Bakr was confronted with many problems. The appearance of false prophets in the various parts of Arabia, the apostasy movement among the various tribes of Arabia, and the refusal of a strong section of people to pay zakat were a challenge to the newly established state. An Arab historian says, "The Arabs were on all sides rising in rebellion. Apostasy and disaffection raised their heads. Christians and Jews began to stretch out their necks, and the faithful were as a flock of sheep without a shepherd, their prophet gone, their number few, their foes a multitude." But Abu Bakr had the courage to face the situation. The first task of Abu Bakr, on his accession to the Caliphate, was to fulfill the desire of his master. Just before his death, the Prophet had given orders for an expedition to the Syrian border. When Usama, the leader of the expedition, was about to start, the news of the Prophet's illness reached his ears, and he had to postpone the departure of his army. Abu Bakr directed that the Prophet's order must be carried out, and ordered the commander to proceed. It was a most critical time when he ordered Usama to proceed to Syria. The spread of apostasy and rebellious activities of the Jews and the Christians began to pour into Medina before the army had set out for Syria. In the circumstances, the companions of the Khalifa approached him to withdraw his orders. But Abu Bakr replied, "Who am I to withhold the army that the Prophet of God himself ordered to proceed? Come whatever may," he further said. "Medina may stand or fall, the Caliphate may live or die. The Prophet's word must be fulfilled." At last, the army set out. Within a few days, Usama came back with a glorious triumph from Syria. False prophets. The success of the Prophet's mission fired many a man with ambition. Towards the close of his life, several pretenders arose in different parts of the country. The news of the Prophet's death rekindled the revolt started by the false prophets. Of these false prophets, Aswad Ansi, or the Veiled Prophet, was the first to rise in Yemen. He was the leader of the Ansi tribe. He collected a vast number of soldiers in cooperation with the neighboring chieftains and stood in open revolt against Islam. Musaylima, who came of the tribe of Banu Hanifa in Central Arabia, rose in revolt in Yamama and laid claim to the prophetic office. He came to Medina with the deputation of his people. But on his return home, he began his preaching by laying claim to prophethood. His tribe, as they did not like to follow the prophet of the Quraysh, accepted him as their prophet. Tulayha, who came of the tribe of Banu Asad in northern Arabia, was a wealthy chief and a great warrior. He stood up in open revolt against Islam just after the demise of the prophet. Saja, a Christian woman, also claimed to be a prophetess. She came of the tribe of Banu Yarbu in Central Asia. She secured the support of some of her tribes, but she had not the courage to face the Muslim army. She fell in love with Musaylima, another pretender, and after a stay of 3 days with him, she went back to her people. Apostasy Movement. The short Caliphate of Abu Bakr was mostly occupied with the so-called Ridda apostasy wars, says Prophet. As soon as the news of the Prophet's death was noised abroad, a section of people raised the standard of rebellion against the Islamic polity of Medina and renounced or apostatized Islam. The movement led by these people was known as the Apostasy Movement. While the false prophets made their own tribes renounce Islam, some other Arab tribes apostatized it on other grounds. The following are the causes which led the unruly tribes to rise in revolt against Islam. Causes. The ascendancy of Medina became an eyesore to the Makkans, who did not want the supremacy of the sister city. So long as the strong personality of the Prophet was there, they remained in sullen silence. But the demise of the Prophet gave them an opportunity to overthrow the influence of the Madanites and the national characteristics of the Arabs, which had been kept in check by the Prophet, began to raise their heads. Secondly, the tribes of Arabia obeyed the order of their leaders and followed their action blindly, even at the advent of Islam. So when their leaders became Muslims, they followed them in good faith. As a result, all individuals of the tribe refused to follow blindly the action of their leaders. Thirdly, a thorough change was brought by the Prophet of Islam over the social, political, and religious conditions of Arabia. The tribes of Arabia were not accustomed to these, and hence they protested against these changes by rising in open rebellion. Fourthly, many of the Arab tribes thought the prophetic office to be profitable, and so they persuaded the Arabs to support them with a view to fulfilling their object. These chiefs gave false promise to the people and inspired them to stand up against the Muslims. Fifthly, the people had just joined the fold of Islam when the Prophet had passed away. The people who could not get much time and opportunity to go into the inner spirit of Islam were ignorant of its true worth and spirit, and hence they relapsed into their tribal creeds and once more challenged the authority of Islam. Lastly, the strict rules of morality enforced by Islam and the Arabs' unwillingness to pay the poor tax, zakat, led the people of different centers under different leaders to rise against Islam.